Welcome, welcome everyone to tonight's Acts 2 workshop, navigating the transition from home to long-term assisted care for adults with the dementia, what to know and ask. I'm Dr. Rob Glukoff, servant leader of the Acts 2 project and professor, Florida State University College of Medicine. In case you are unfamiliar with the term Acts 2, it stands for African American Alzheimer's Caregiver Training and Support Project 2. Folks, I am very enthusiastic about the prospects of tonight's workshop. Its primary goals are to provide practical, down-to-earth information about negotiating the transition from home to long-term assisted care for loved ones with dementia. Caregivers often have questions about these long-term care options, want to learn more about them, and ask questions to those in the know. Folks, here's your opportunity. Workshop presenters Leslie Provis and Mary Beth Mann, leaders in the field of dementia and assisted care, will cover key topics such as knowing when you and your loved one with dementia may be ready to make the transition from home to long-term care, identifying options for assisted care, and determining the cost of such services. Felicia Reed, family caregiver, will share her experiences and lessons learned in moving her loved one with dementia to an assisted care facility. Tamika Norton Brown, Acts 2 project coordinator, will provide information about faith-based skills training and support for dementia caregivers, as well as local, state, and national dementia care resources. You folks, audience participants, are strongly encouraged to ask questions and provide input throughout the workshop. Before I introduce this evening's presenters, I want to recognize our partners who have contributed both resources and guidance in the development of Acts 2's Dementia Caregiver Workshop Series. Acts 2's primary collaborators are the Florida State Primitive Baptist Convention, the Florida Progressive Missionary and Educational Baptist Convention, the Florida General Baptist Convention, the African Methodist Episcopal Church 11th Episcopal District, and Florida State University's College of Medicine's REACH project. Turning now to tonight's presenters, folks, we have four inspiring speakers. Our first presenter, Leslie Provis, is social worker and coordinator of the West Florida Memory Disorder Clinic in Pensacola, Florida. Ms. Provis received her Master of Social Work degree from the University of West Florida. In her clinical coordinator role, she provides counseling, education, and resources for persons living with dementia and their family caregivers. Additionally, she conducts dementia-related training to healthcare facilities and first responders, and is a strong advocate for person-centered care and meeting the needs of older adults with dementia and their family caregivers. In Leslie's limited spare time, she enjoys kayaking, working out, and loving her cats. Our second presenter, Mary Beth Mann, is Senior Living Care Advisor with Assisted Living Locators in Pensacola, Florida. Her journey in assisted care for persons with dementia began over a decade ago when she volunteered at Covenant Hospice and later provided marketing services at a Pensacola-based assisted living and memory care facility. Approximately 7 years ago, Mary Beth fulfilled her dream to meet the needs of persons with dementia and their family caregivers by both organizing a regional support and education group and by helping such families to identify optimal assisted care arrangements. Mary Beth has a very loving family consisting of her husband of 30 years and her 3 sons. Mary Beth loves to travel and to spend quality time with her family, both in Florida and New Jersey. Our third presenter, Felicia Reed, is family caregiver for her dear mom with dementia. She spent her childhood in the Detroit area. Felicia received her bachelor's degree in marketing from, I don't know what that was, folks. She received her bachelor's degree in marketing from Michigan State University and subsequently worked in sales and marketing at various Fortune 100 companies. After marrying and raising a son with multiple disabilities, Felicia strongly embraced her role as an advocate for persons with chronic health conditions. She put her faith into action by serving on the local school board and on service committees that drew on her expertise, such as Field of Dreams and Special Parents Kids Network. She has been a member of Christian Stronghold Church in Philadelphia for over 32 years and has served as director of the church's career guidance ministry, women's leadership board, and women's hospitality ministry. Last, Tamika Norton Brown is coordinator of the Acts 2 project. She has worked in the area of survey development and evaluation for the past 23 years. Tamika has served as caregiver for her dear aunt and uncle with dementia and has a passion for helping others. Tamika has been a great source of encouragement and support for literally hundreds of family caregivers of older adults with dementia across Florida and the U.S. Tamika is also a strong leader by example in her church community. Folks, during the course of the workshop, we encourage you to share questions to be answered after each presentation using the text message function of Facebook Live. We also will have a 20-minute question and answer period following the last presentation. And now we have Miss Leslie Provis, social worker. Hi, Leslie.
Hey, everybody.
Take it away.
All right. The slides coming up. So thank you for having me. I appreciate it. This is the first time I've actually been able to give a presentation on when to move your loved one into an assisted care home community. So I do work with dementia patients and their caregivers. I work doing their intake and kind of through their journey. So I'm going to go into how to identify some of their behaviors and go over like activities of daily living, signs that it's time to think about, if not act on, getting your loved one into a more safe environment. Next slide, please. So when is the right time to consider this move? And whenever I bring this up with caregivers and family members, most of the time I'll hear, we're not ready for that. And I always encourage them that though they may not be ready for it at the moment, it's always good to look into your options right now. So when it does get to that point, where it's more than likely, it will, unfortunately, they know what resources are out there. So they're better prepared, and it will be a smoother transition to get your loved one into the safe and secure place. And so I'm going to go into, again, ways of identifying how and when to move your loved one. Change slide, please. So what to look for. And this is something that I go over at every visit I have with the caregivers and the patients that are living with dementia is we talk about their activities of daily living, also called ADLs. We want to see how they're doing. And so we need to be on the lookout for, are they still able to do certain things independently, or do they need help? And this is going to determine their level of care for when they do move into a residence. And we also want to look at their behaviors and their mood changes. Next slide, please. So what are activities of daily living? Basically everything that we do, from bathing, dressing, brushing our teeth, brushing our hair, going to the bathroom, cooking, cleaning. Can we use the washer or dryer? That's what I ask. Can you use the microwave? Can you use the phone? What 3-digit number would you call in case of an emergency? Are you paying your bills? Are they getting paid on time? Driving is really, really important. Are they getting lost? Are they getting into accidents? Are they getting confused? Of course, being able to feed themselves. Next slide, please. So what do we need to ask about ADLs? And like I said, when I'm working with patients and their caregivers, I'm asking, are they still able to complete these tasks? And if so, to what level? A lot of times it could be mobility issues. They are able to bathe themselves by themselves, but they need help getting in, and they may need help actually washing their hair or something like that. So that doesn't necessarily mean that they're incapable of completing it by themselves, but they need that additional help. But we also have some that they need step-by-step instruction. They need someone to hand them the soap. They need to be told what to do with the soap. So obviously the level of care is much higher than those that just have mobility issues. So are they able to do those things on their own? Do they know how to brush their teeth? Are they brushing their teeth on a regular basis? Can they get dressed? Are they dressing weather appropriately? Are they putting on their clothing correctly? Is it inside out? Are they putting one arm in, a shirt, shirt, I can't think of it, the neck or something? Are they keeping up with their financial responsibilities? Are they having missed payments? Are they having double payments? I mentioned this a moment ago. Can they use the stove? Are they leaving things on the stove? Are they putting aluminum foil things in the microwave? Do they know how to use the buttons on the microwave? Another important thing is, can they use the phone? Because that is important, because if they were to get lost or if an emergency happens at the home, how are they going to call for emergency should one arise? I always ask, do they know the 3-digit number? And if they don't know that number, I'll ask the patient or the caregiver, do they know how to contact somebody in case of an emergency? Are they taking their meds correctly? This is a big one, because since they do have memory loss, they may either forget to take their meds or take too many meds because they don't remember that they already took them. And so, for obvious reasons, this is very important. So again, taking all these things into consideration, what they can do, what they can't do, and the things that they are capable of, at what level of independence are they able to complete these things? Next slide, please. So if the answer to most of those questions are no, they're not capable of doing the basic activities of daily living, they more than likely need to be transitioned into an assisted living community. Next slide, please. Also, what we want to look for is behavior and mood changes. Are they wandering a lot? Are they leaving the house? There are ways of preventing one from wandering and leaving, but it gets to a point that, it's not safe for them and it's not safe for you. And there's always that concern that something will happen. So, we need to monitor that. And how are they doing overall? Are they more disoriented? Are they more confused? Are they more agitated, aggressive? Are they withdrawn, isolated, depressed? Just how is their behavior overall? And of course, there are things that are going to contribute to behavior changes, such as if they have an infection or a broken bone or something, or their medication is off. But even so, these things need to be monitored closely, because that's going to help determine if there are any underlying issues and what level of care they would need when transitioning into a community, so that the staff know how to best help them and keep them safe. Next slide, please. And when you really look at your loved one, this is something to ask yourself. Are they still active and vibrant like they were years ago? Or do you need a more limited person, or do you see a more limited person who needs additional help with personal needs and help around the house? And I had a caregiver call a couple weeks ago, and she knew the answer, what she needed to do with her mom, but she needed to hear from someone else what she needed to do. Her mom was constantly wandering out of the house. She wasn't taking her meds consistently. And I mean, overall, she wasn't safe. And she struggled with, knowing that it was time to put her in the home. She felt very guilty. And she felt like if she were to do that, it was dishonoring her and her independence. But I reminded her that safety is number one. And her mom was not safe at all because of the medication. And also, she kept leaving the house. I joked with her. I was like, "You are 99% sure." And she knew. And I was like, "You can go that extra 1% and, make that transition." And it's actually a good story. I just checked in with her the other day, and her mom is doing exceptionally well. Some do have challenges moving in, and that's to be expected because they're in a totally different atmosphere. But she, the caregiver, also said that she feels more relieved and just a sense of peace because she did get her mom in a safe place. And so she's not worried about her mom, and her mom is doing well. Next slide, please. So this, of course, we need to keep their best interest in mind. And again, safety, can't stress enough, is number one. We want to make sure that your loved one is safe. And like in the example I just shared, this woman, this caregiver, knew that her mom was not safe, but she did need some reassurance that she was making the right decision to move her mom into a facility, to a residence. And also, the places that are available, they have trained staff. They have who are, thank you for the 5-minute warning, who are trained to work with dementia patients. And it's working with dementia patients is challenging, and even those that know about it and are trained, it will be a continual learning experience for them as well. And so, knowing that it's time to transition your loved one, the next step is to reach out to organizations such as the one that Mary Beth Mann will be speaking of, because they know how to help guide you as the caregiver family member in this process, because the process, it is very challenging and there's a lot to it. But with the help of someone like Mary Beth Mann, who rocks the house, she will be able to do the footwork, the leg work for you, and make it much an easier transition for you. Next slide. And that's all I got. I appreciate you guys having me. Thank you.
I would say you delivered a lot with all you got. That was great, Leslie. Thank you so much. Really appreciate. We're so delighted to have you and feel privileged to get this information. I have a couple questions for you. If we have any from the audience, SB Esperance, just pass them by. Okay, I'm going to take the lead on this. Here's just a general question. When you're considering the possible transition of your loved one with dementia from home to assisted care, does that mean you no longer are a care partner for them because they're in a community, in another location, that somehow your role has to change dramatically?
It will change, yes. But I mean, you will still play an important role. But I think initially, what we typically share with caregivers, and I think what staff say at treatment at the residential facilities, is that they like their family members to initially come in, make them comfortable, do the, have lunch with them, talk to other people, maybe join in some activities, but then kind of like wean off a bit so that they can get acclimated themselves. But yeah, of course, the role is definitely going to change in a good way.
There's another question, and then we'll shift. You focused quite a bit, and it was actually very effective on the activities of daily living that more or less become the criteria for determining when it may be wise to consider other options. But what about on the care partner side? What are the experiences that they might be having? You touched upon this, but what are the experiences that generally lead you to begin speaking to them about other living options, other homes and other locations in which their loved one might consider living?
Sounds like that would be a Mary Beth question. Mary, um,
You can go ahead with it
what do
because
you
this is
what
a
do you
readiness
mean?
question.
What do you mean? I don't think I get
What
that.
I'm saying is, what are the kinds of issues that you look for? You touched upon this, you know, earlier in your presentation, that might be for a care partner a reason for them to consider for their loved one, not just the loved one's activity patterns, but for themselves
Oh,
and their quality of life.
you mean like peace of mind to know what the plans are, have something already in line, kind of similar
Or
to
like safety concerns, you mentioned those. That's
Mhm.
big, right? You mentioned that. There may be other caregiver related issues where the caregiver doesn't feel. Don raises the question point to you, and you can elaborate. It may be that the caregiver goes away for a half hour, and then they find their loved one engaging in an activity that is maybe injurious to themselves, or they've had a fall. Then it becomes a question, and they may be 80 years of age themselves, the care partner. When I'm thinking it works both ways, not only the needs of the person with dementia, but also the quality of life and needs of the person who's providing the support and caregiving. That's a readiness issue, isn't it?
Mm-hmm. Readiness issue for all involved. Yes, sir. And then what you guys provide as far as emotional and faith-based support, I do refer a lot of people to you so that they get the additional education that they need to get that extra support, because that's very important. Hope I sort of answered the question. I
No,
confuse easily.
you did we're good. We're good. Thank you, Leslie. We'll pick it up. There'll be more questions at the end, and we'll have more for you in particular, because this readiness question for transition is so key for both the person with dementia and the caregiver. You talked about guilt related issues. All of this is so important and part of the process in determining readiness and what's needed to make potentially, and I underscore potentially, make the next step to transition to assisted care. Johnny Lee seems to think that I'm on target. Well, if Johnny Lee says it, it must be correct.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Johnny Lee. But this is really I think this is particularly helpful and important what you raised, because this is the beginning point of the conversation. Thank you. I'm excited about what you shared. And now we have Mary Beth Mann.
Hello, everybody. I am Mary Beth Mann. I am a senior living care advisor with Assisted Living Locators here in Pensacola. I am going to talk to you about what I do every day with the families that I work with. Typically, sometimes I get a phone call from Leslie, and she'll tell me there's a family in need. Somebody is looking to place their family in a safe environment, or their loved one in a safe environment. We can move on to the next slide real quick. When I get that call from Leslie, and we can go on to slide 3. When I get that call from Leslie, I kind of run down, well, what I want to show you first is what are the steps in making the transition from home to long-term care assistance. I'm going to run through these briefly, but then I'm going to come back and talk about this very first one, finding a suitable long-term assisted care community. That's very broad, but I am going to touch on that in the next slide. But that is your number one step, is finding one that will help your person with their dementia issues. The next thing, once you do finalize what community is best for you, the community will probably come in and assess. They're going to come to your home, or they may ask you to bring them to the community, but they're going to come to your home and assess in the environment that your loved one lives in. And they are going to make sure that they can adequately care for your loved one's needs. Sometimes it's not just dementia that's involved. There's physical ailments that are going on, medical conditions. So they have to make sure that they are able to take care of all your loved one's needs. So they will come in and do an assessment. Normally it's a formality. These are assisted livings, and they are there to help with all those issues. But again, they have to come in and do an assessment. Once you check those two boxes, you guys are then in agreement maybe with where you're going. You're going to pay some deposits. You are going to do a wealth of paperwork. Some of the paperwork that they require may be medical, and it may have to be done by it can be done by the neurologist, but typically they have your primary care physician fill out some paperwork. Here in the state of Florida, the form is called an 1823. It has to accompany every resident when they move into a community, because basically what it is telling them is this person's diagnoses, the medications they are on, their capabilities. They check boxes to say whether they can do this independently or they need assistance. It's kind of the ADLs that Leslie was talking about. But anyway, once you get all that paperwork done, your next step is going to probably pay the first month's rent. And when you get that first month settled, you're going to have take the first 2 days. You're going to take maybe the first weekend. I always say sign the paperwork on a Friday, and then Monday you're moving your loved one in. But over the weekend, you are going to create an environment that is familiar, that is personal to the person moving in. And what I mean by that is you want to make this space as comfortable as possible. So bring that comfortable lazy boy they lay in all the time. Maybe even the side table and lamp that they're used to turning on. Bring their bed from home if they're not in a hospital bed. Bring pictures on the wall. Make this space personal. This transition is very difficult, and to give them a familiar environment is going to make it a little bit easier. And then you're going to have the move-in day after that. And move-in days are normally Monday through Friday. Weekend staff, like in hospitals and everywhere, are a little different. Monday through Friday, you're going to see the same faces over and over. So they like to move in, and I always try to get people to move in on a Monday if it works with everybody. But anyway, you move in on that day, and I want you to be prepared. It's going to be difficult. It is like dropping your child off to summer camp for the first time. It is equally difficult for the family doing it, or for the caregiver doing it, and for the person moving in. Some people acclimate quicker than others. It kind of depends on where you are in your dementia journey. The community may say, and I think Leslie touched on this, stay away for a couple of weeks. Let this person get used to their new caregivers. Let them acclimate to their space. Give them a few days. I have never placed anybody that didn't eventually acclimate. Some, it's no problem, and they're pleasantly confused, and they just go on, and you can come in and out and visit, and it's not a big deal. But others need some time to really acclimate, and it could take anywhere from 2 weeks to a couple of months. But anyway, we can go on to the next slide. Things to consider when you are looking for a suitable community. you need to assess the level of care needed for your loved one living with dementia. And when you're doing that, because dementia may not be the only thing in the picture, they may have some other ailments going on that maybe that determines, how much help they're going to need in these assisted livings. I will tell you the number one criteria for assisted livings here in Florida is you need to be weight bearing. So if you have some physical limitations that have you bedridden, you are not appropriate for assisted living here in Florida. So you would probably need to be looking into skilled nursing facilities if you are completely bedridden. But here in Florida, all you have to do is bear weight. It is assisted living. They are assisting you, and you need to kind of assist back. So if you can bear weight and pivot into a bed or a chair or a toilet, then you would be appropriate for assisted living. Anyway, the next thing that I talk to families about is geographical preference. I often try to place somebody close to the family, the caregivers that are going to be visiting. Okay, not necessarily where this person is coming from, but say Susie lives across town and mom lives over here, in a different part of town. I'm not placing her where mom lives. I want to place, if I can, find a placement for them closer to Susie so that Susie can, it's accessible to Susie. Susie can go and visit as much as possible, because I find when families stay engaged with the care or visit frequently, people tend to do better in assisted living. The next thing that we have to talk about is your financial situation. Assisted living is expensive, so we have to kind of figure out what your parameters are and what communities you can afford. So when I take all that information, I try to give the families, 3 or 4 places to look at. I am doing all the legwork. If you do not have somebody helping you, it is very difficult. In my area, I have 40 assisted livings to look at. So I can narrow down those choices just by talking about your physical and social needs and your financial obligations and your geographical preferences. I just narrow it down to 3 or 4 to give you to look at. And then you're going to want to go and familiarize yourself with the assisted living communities. You're going to do that by scheduling tours. I like to go with my people on tours. I help them with questions. If they prefer to go on their own, or if you don't have somebody helping you, you can find questions. You can go online and find questions, but I arm my people with a list of questions, and I say, write them down before we actually do the tour so that you are prepared to ask the certain questions. Some of the questions I would have you ask are, is there 24/7 staffing? Is this, are the staffs trained for memory conditions, dementia, Alzheimer's? Some of the other ones, do you transport to doctor's appointments, or am I still going to be doing that? And if they do transport, is it door to door, or do they escort them into the appointment? Because your loved one has dementia. They may not be able to get dropped off outside a doctor's office and get to the doctor and then call back the driver and say, come pick me up. Early stages, maybe, but latter stages, no. So there's a wealth of questions that you can ask, and it is so helpful to have a placement service or someone like me with assisted living locators that can help you go through these questions. We can go to the next slide. Short and long-term care options. There are so many options out there for help, assisted living, and in-home care options. But the ones I kind of want to focus on this page, because we're going to talk more about the communities, is really respite care and adult daycare. And maybe in-home companion care, because in my role, I do a lot of placement, but I also give people resources, because there is a real thing called caregiver burnout. And so these people need help. in the home. And if you're not getting help in the home and you're doing it all alone, you need to take time for yourself. You need to get respite care for you. So respite care is within these communities that you have looked at. Memory care facilities have respite beds. Not all of them, if they are full, they don't reserve a room for respite care. But you make some phone calls, you find out who has a respite bed available, and you can take your loved one there and you can go on a week's vacation, kind of decompress and, just take care of yourself for a while and then come back and, be a rejuvenated caregiver. Another big underused form of help would be adult daycare. Adult daycare, we have a program here put out by the Council of Aging here in Pensacola that is amazing. And it is relatively inexpensive when you compare it to in-home companion care. It is around here, it is $35 an hour to have somebody come in and sit with your loved one, and you do that for 8 hours a day, you're spending a great deal of money. We have adult daycare here programs that you can go 1 day a week, 5 days a week. You can go a half-day program, a full-day program. It is $55 a day for a half-day program and $90 a day for a full day. They dispense medications. They have meals, and they do activities, and that your loved one's in a safe environment while you go, maybe at the very least, go get your hair done, go grocery shopping, take care of yourself. So on this slide, they're the two things I wanted to focus on because we're going to touch on the other ones in the other slides. So we can go on to the next one. We're going to talk about the communities that are out there. Independent living community is just senior 65 and older retirement communities, basically. These are healthy seniors. They're living independently. This is not something, if you're placing somebody with dementia, unless you are moving in with them and you are going to be there to care for them in an independent community. But if you are looking just to place your loved one with dementia, this isn't an option for you. So we can move on to the next slide. Continuing care retirement communities, you see in there, it says they have memory care. But the caveat to this community is you have to move in as a healthy, independent person. So these communities normally are a very expensive buy-in, and then you pay monthly fees on your rent in there. And they offer you all these options to transition to assisted living or memory care or skilled nursing, but you need to come in as an independent. So if you are dealing with somebody with dementia and you're trying to place them, this is not an option for you right now. So we'll go on to the next slide. So assisted living communities, they're licensed and regulated by the state. They have 24-hour access to care staff. They assist you with those ADLs that Leslie was talking about. They can cover all of them. You may go in there and not need really any of them at the time, but they are there when it's needed. And with assisted living communities and dementia, if you are early onset, if you are newly diagnosed, and maybe say, I'm working with a little lady now and she's living at home, I feel she would benefit greatly from being in an assisted living community. She is taking care of herself right now at home, but she has given up her license. She is no longer driving. So she finds herself alone. And going into an assisted living, you would have more stimulation in an assisted living. You would have conversation. You would have activities. And I truly believe that keeping that mind going, it's going to keep you going a little longer. Maybe hold off on that dementia diagnosis and the progression of it. So keep your mind going as long as possible. So assisted living is an option for some people with dementia. We can go on to the next slide. Memory care is what most of you will be looking into. There are communities out there where you can start in assisted living and then transition to memory care. They will have a separate section of their assisted living building that is secured for memory care. So if you do start assisted, you can roll over into memory care when the time comes. But there are also assisted living communities that are just memory care. They provide all the help that assisted living provides, but they also have specially trained staff that is going to help you help your loved one redirect. They can normally communicate better. They know how to, when you're asking those questions over and over again, they don't get as frustrated because they are trained not to get frustrated. Sometimes they kind of go with the stories that someone is telling, even if it makes no sense. They're just trained to deal with people with dementia. And these communities will be secured, and they will be secured for their benefit. They are locked facilities, normally keypad entry, but that is for the benefit of your loved one to keep them safe. We can go on to the next slide. Financial options for paying for assisted living and long-term care. Overall, long-term care is private pay, comes right out of our pockets. But there are other options out there like long-term care insurance. Only about 10% of the people I've ever placed have long-term care insurance, but they are the lucky ones because those that have the policies, it typically pays for almost 100% of their care. So if you have a long-term care policy, you're in good shape. The veterans out there, there is an underutilized benefit for y'all, mainly because they don't know about it. Aid in Attendance is there to help veterans with long-term care and their surviving spouses. So you can move in as a couple and qualify. You can move in as a single veteran and qualify. And if you are a surviving spouse, you may qualify for this benefit. So it is absolutely something that you should look into if you are a veteran that served during a wartime. World War II is probably, we are phasing out of World War II, but Vietnam, I left out Korean War, the Vietnam War, the Gulf War, all those wars. If you have served one day active duty during those war times, you may be eligible for that benefit. So look into that. If you are on Medicaid, or you are living within the Medicaid parameters, maybe your income is in the Medicaid parameters, but you're not on Medicaid because your home is paid for and you're able to get by on $2,000, $2,500 a month, whatever it is. If you are not on Medicaid, you could get on Medicaid and apply for the Medicaid waiver. If you are on Medicaid, you need to apply for the Medicaid waiver, and it covers long-term care, not only in skilled nursing, but also assisted living. And then the final note I have here, because a lot of people don't know, they call me and they say, well, I have this insurance, I'm on Medicare, and I have Blue Cross and Blue Shield. That does not cover long-term care, and not in assisted living, not in skilled nursing communities. We can go on to the next slide. So I am at the resource page. Wow, I did this fast. These are your resources. Some of them are nationwide numbers, and a couple are numbers here locally in Florida. I put up there the Northwest Florida Area Agency on Aging. If you are in this area, they are a wealth of information. If you are not dealing with somebody like me, then call them, use them. They have the information you need. There is an area agency on aging all around the country. All your communities have an area agency on aging. Reach out, find them, and seek their help. Elder Helpline, call them. They're there 24/7. Call them. The Alzheimer's Association, I put this one up there because if you are a caregiver dealing and living with somebody with dementia, they can give you the support you need. They can give you the education you need. I love our local Alzheimer's Association. I know if you call that number, and they can get you the support group, a list of support groups. They can tell you when the Alzheimer bus is coming through, and come learn more about what you are dealing with and what you're going to be dealing with in the future. They're a wealth of information, so please use them. National Institute on Aging, I have come across this in the recent future or past. They're a great resource for literature, and it's free. call them. You can get on their website. You can download or you can order books, and they are free. So they also have an Alzheimer's disease education and referral group. And that's the number I put up here. They will guide you. They will be a great resource to you. And finally, assisted living locators. I am giving you my number. There are other placement services out there. If you don't use us, use them. I highly recommend that you get somebody who knows the communities, who can help and guide you with this process, because it is a difficult one. Like I said earlier, I mean, there are 40 in our community alone. So anyway, seek the help. If any of you out there have any questions, call that last number. I will help you find the resources in your area, I promise. I don't care if you're in California, wherever you may be, call me and I will find an assisted living locators near you, or I will help you find the resources you need if they're not there. So anyway, we can go on to the last line. And I know that's questions, so thank you for listening. And I hope I was helpful.
Outstanding. I can honestly say that you and Leslie Provost are the dynamic health provider duo. Both of those presentations were excellent. I just wanted to let folks know that if you did not register to obtain the slides, you can obtain them after by contacting Tamika Norton Brown, and she's going to give you her contact information at the Acts 2 Project, and we'll get you copies, because this information was so important, I think, in understanding the transition to home, to the variety of assisted care opportunities. Got a couple questions for you. I learned quite a bit from your presentation and just wanted to follow up on a couple points. You mentioned that assisted care facilities or services will come into your home and do an initial assessment. Can you tell us about the types of questions that they're likely to ask at that point?
Sure. When you have decided on a community that you're interested in, they're going to come in and they are probably going to tell you, hey, can you have all their medications out so we can look at their medications? They will talk to you one-on-one just like this and talk about diagnoses, their physical limitations. There may be none, but they're going to observe. It is a very non-invasive assessment. They are going to watch how they ambulate from their chair that they're sitting in to the bathroom. Can they toilet themselves? Sometimes you don't even have to watch that if you can physically see that a person is walking on their own and doing everything they can. They're not going to ask them to go into the bathroom. It is a very non-invasive and it's more just personal banter back and forth to see what this person needs. How can we help them? Can we adequately help them? And it is really just maybe a 15-20 minute assessment. It's a formality.
Thank you. I just wasn't sure about the scope of questions. I was wondering if they also ask about challenging behaviors.
I'm sure there is a whole conversation about that. And typically when we start out on the tours, we are talking about behaviors, because I normally sit down and talk with the families. And if these people are getting out and they're exit seeking often, if they're sundowning and their problems are just at night, I convey that to the assisted living with, of course, with the party sitting next to me. But I try to convey all of that. I don't want any surprises. I don't want them to go into a community and we didn't know they sundowned. I want to make sure that community can take care of their loved one. So yes, we're very forthcoming on what is going on. And if there are any great agitations in this person's, wheelhouse, yes, we're going to make them known.
Well, that's so really very impressive that you front load these questions with the referrals that you're going to make to the particular assisted care home or community, so that they're informed and so that that interview that's done early on, there are no surprises there. You're pretty much laying it on the line.
Yes, I am honest with the families that I deal with about the communities they're going to, and I am honest to the communities about the families I am bringing in. everything is on the table.
Yeah, because it fits the issue, and that I know you're really tuned in, Mary Beth Mann, and so is Leslie Provis. Another quickie question.
Sure.
You mentioned assisted living, that there will be provision made to have persons, whether they're CNAs or whether they're helpers of some sort, to provide assistance with basic activities of living, such as showering, or potentially with other issues around safety and medications. Am I getting that right? That they're involved in that, or is that the role of
Yes.
the person who's there, or the family member? I would
Yeah,
assume.
let me clarify that, because I guess I didn't dive in. I was afraid I wasn't going to have enough time.
Oh, well, that's all right. Do a brief dive now, and we'll
But
cover
yes,
it later.
because there's one other thing that I want to add to on top of that. But yes, they will take care of when you're going, especially memory care. In memory care, they are there to take over everything. They are prepared to take over everything. The number one thing they are going to take over, whether you need it or not, but a doctor, if you're going into memory care, they're going to take care of your meds. They're going to make sure you're getting your medications on time, the same time every day. But anyway, they will take care of you, the bathing, the dressing. But in memory care, they're going to allow you to do as much as you can do. We want to keep that brain working. So if someone can still dress themselves, hey, they may not match their clothes. They may have a red and blue, and it doesn't look great today, but they dress themselves. That's a feat. They're going to encourage them to continue to do that, right? They're going to encourage them to still button their buttons until they can't do it. So they are there to help, but they allow the person themselves to do as much as possible on their own. But they are there to support all the ADLs that this person is having trouble with, right?
Thanks a lot, Mary Beth. We have some follow-up questions, but in the interest of time and bringing on Felicia Reed, we'll stop here if that's all right with you.
Yep.
Thank you so much. Outstanding presentation.
Thank you.
And now we have Felicia Reed. What a blessing to have you here, Felicia. It's one thing to hear it from the professional perspective, but when it comes down to understanding, making the transition, it really is essential to have the voice and amplifying the voice of care partners who are directly involved in this process. And we are honored to have you today to talk about your experiences and lessons learned. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. It's really good to be here. So my role is, I guess, to talk a little bit about my story. And I will start with saying that my story began with having multiple conversations with my parents about their responsibilities that they were starting to have difficulty with. Everything from maintaining their home to taking care of themselves, paying bills, all the things that I think both Leslie and Mary Beth kind of touched upon. And we started these conversations. It was lighthearted, it was joking. And I think that would be my recommendation. Every family is different, but I think if you can start to approach these conversations before the decline gets too far, it is helpful. Eventually, as things got more serious, the conversations needed to get more serious. And I will start by telling you that I've done this a couple of times. And when the conversations got more serious, I can't stress enough how important it is to get people like a Leslie and a Mary Beth involved. They help you focus. They ask pertinent questions, because what you're going to do is you're going to do your research when you are starting to think like this may need to happen as your loved one declines. And so their help is invaluable. They both talked about the questions. Mary Beth talked about the questions she's going to equip you with, and the things you should look for. And so I just can't stress enough, because they're going to ask you about your specific needs. And so instead of you running all over the place, you're going to go visit places that are um, as close to what you think your family needs as possible. Um, my first time when I needed to place my parents, they were relatively healthy and relatively independent. So it was very different than the second time when I needed to place my mom, who had declined quite a bit, and I needed a different kind of placement. Um, it is a very challenging decision, and you are never 100% prepared. The example has already been given that a person was 99% there, and so you need to allow that. You'll never be 100% probably on board, but safety comes first. Your own health comes first, and so as I started to make those decisions, I went to 12 or 15 different places in Florida, even though I live in New Jersey. My parents resisted. And then eventually I backed off and things started to happen. And they finally came to a decision, and I placed them at a wonderful facility here in New Jersey. It was a hectic process, especially with them coming out of state, but it was absolutely 100% the right decision until it wasn't. A few months later, my father just up and left. And ultimately, my mother followed him. And it's disappointing. It's disappointing because I do feel like that was the right decision, but maybe just the timing was wrong. But fast forward a few years, and my father passes away. And here we are again trying to determine how we're going to take care of my mom. And we tried to do it at home because we knew that was really what she wanted. But we got to a point where it wasn't working out. And so the second time around, and this time under a whole lot more duress, I placed my mom in a memory care facility in the Pensacola area. So two very different experiences. And in each experience, though, I still had a lot of work to do. There was disappointments. There's disappointments now. This situation now is very challenging, obviously, because it's long distance, and I am still extremely participating in her care. Between visits, between calls, between checking on things, there's just a lot of micromanaging that is still involved. So I may not be directly putting my hands on my mom, but making sure things don't fall through the cracks, making sure she gets on the schedule to do things. It is a little bit challenging. So make sure you do your research. Make sure you have a notebook, and if you work with a person like Mary Beth, she's going to make sure you have the right questions. All the things that are really, really important. For example, I didn't get a chance to do this the second time, but the first time when I was placing my parents, I talked to everybody. I didn't just talk to the salesperson or the community director. I wanted to talk to the chef, the housekeeper. And what I found was there wasn't a lot of turnover at that time. And so the community that I ended up choosing, I felt great about, because people were there like years. And this is a pretty high turnover kind of business. So to find out that there were a number of people that worked in housekeeping, worked in billing, the nurses had actually been there for a decent amount of time made me feel comfortable. Now that's me and my family, and that was something that was important to me. And this post-COVID age, that might be very, very difficult to find now, given everything that's happened over the past few years. And I mean, I certainly don't have it in the current situation that I'm in. But for me, that was something that was important. So you kind of have to evaluate those things. So even though you're given a list of questions, really keep in mind what makes the most sense. Is it an accessible building? Is that important? Is the decor important? So as I was looking at, like I said, 12, 15 different places, I knew that I knew the different things my parents would like and would dislike. And I knew that they needed to make this move, but were very hesitant and very reluctant. So I tried to, as part of my decision, make sure that I was taking into consideration things that would make it an easier transition. I'm trying to think what else I can say about that hasn't already been said about the things that I did in terms of making this transition. So I'm going to stop there to see if there's any questions that anybody might have, or that the doctor might have.
All that I can say, that was amazing. What a great narrative, your experience. I know that it's very difficult. I thank you for your willingness to tell it like it is with us and be vulnerable with us, Ms. Reed. We thank you so much. God bless you, dear. I do have a couple questions. I know others will too, but I just want to say right now, we love you and we thank you. You're amazing. It's so important to hear your experience. You did mention earlier, and I just wanted, this may be one question we could follow up with the panel too. I wouldn't be surprised that others who are in the audience have a number of questions for you. How did your role change when your mom was placed in memory care in Pensacola? What specifically, I heard a few things you mentioned, but what did you do before and what happened after that's different, so that the audience of care partners like myself would have an idea of what changed for you when you made that assisted care transition for your mom?
So the physical care that she required is the biggest thing. I no longer had that responsibility. But there were things that I needed to make sure that the facility where she was took very seriously. So again, for my mom, she has severe glaucoma. And so it was very important that if I wasn't going to be the one doing her eye drops, I made sure she had the right eye drops, what time they were given, that they were given properly. They needed to be given a certain way. So I kind of try to, I can't train all the staff, but I would talk to the head of nursing and made sure that they understand that this was a critical part of her care. So some of that is just talking to the staff and making sure they understand the way my mother likes things and what makes her most comfortable, and double checking that those things are being done, because most places are not 100% staffed. And it's extremely important that you visit. I heard both Leslie and Mary Beth say, stay away for a while, blah, blah, blah. I did not do that. Didn't do it.
Yeah, I hear you.
I had to the second time because they were not here. My mom is in Pensacola, so I had no choice but to. But but you have to kind of gauge that. I do understand what they mean by that, but I think it's important. My mother was not going to be able to communicate her likes and dislikes, so I had to be her advocate. So your number one role is to advocate for the things that your loved one wants, needs, to keep them comfortable and safe. And so there were safety measures that I wanted to put in. I know my mom would get up and go to the bathroom in the middle of the night. I wanted a bed alarm. They weren't going to think to ask that or provide that or those kinds of things, but I had to anticipate those needs. I wanted the floor pads just in case, something happened. I made sure her name was on things because, I was bringing nice things. I wanted to keep nice things. So you're still advocating and protecting and trying to keep them safe. The facility that she's in right now, I'm on the phone like daily, which I'm not happy about, but that's a different show. So I still think that I made the right decision. I just feel like I can't take my hands completely off, and I think that's anywhere you go. To what degree is gonna vary, and it's varies based on the needs of your loved one and on what the facility, that culture is. So I hope that answers your question.
Oh, that was brilliant. With such wisdom. And we're going to shift, but we're going to ask some more questions. Obviously, what you do in advocating may be what you get in terms of quality of life for your mom. So I'm glad that you raised this because making assumptions that I don't need to tell you that the issues that are important to you are getting done, especially if you're in another state, probably is not the best assumption to make.
No, it absolutely is not. You
Oh,
you
well, there you
uh,
go.
you can't. I mean, you have if you're far away, whether it's in another state, I think that is very important. It was brought up. Place your loved one someplace where
Mhm.
they can have visitors as
Amen.
frequently as possible. Yeah.
Yeah, and I do believe you have family here in town, in Pensacola.
Oh
That
yeah, I
helps.
got a team.
Yeah, well, there you go. Well, thank you, Felicia.
Welcome.
Outstanding, so helpful. And now we have Acts 2 project coordinator, Tamika Norton Brown. So great to have you. You are a care partner and have been, and you're what I said about you is totally accurate. That you are a person with great passion for supporting and advocating for persons who are who are persons with living with dementia and their care partners. So I'll let you go ahead and talk a little bit about Acts 2.
Okay, thank you, Dr. G. What I'm going to do is to give information about our Acts 2 project. Next slide, please. Our Acts 2 project has three major types of services. The first is faith integrated group skills training and support for distressed African American caregivers of older adults with dementia across Florida. And you'll hear me refer to this as our 12-session program, and I'll give a more detailed description of that in a moment. We also do dementia awareness presentations and workshops at faith community and elder care venues, as well as through social and print media across Florida and the US. The third leg is individual telephone based problem solving and information and referral consultations to all dementia caregivers and other stakeholders across Florida and the US. Let me also preface this by saying that everything that we do in Acts 2 is free of charge. So there's no charge for participating in the groups, no charge for the presentations, and no charge for problem solving or information and referral consultations. Next slide, please. Okay, I'm now going to give a more detailed explanation of our 12-session program. For our 12-session program, you need to be an African American relative caregiver. So we loosely define relative. So it can be someone taking care of a neighbor down the street that they love as an aunt. If they love that person as an aunt, and consider them to be their family member, then for purposes of registration in our program, we consider them to be their family member. They also need to spend 6 hours a week in caregiving, and we count if you're taking going by, taking, making sure that they have their medications. We count that as caregiving. If you're washing clothes, making doctor's appointments, we count that as caregiving. So that goes in to that 6 hours a week, and then you have to be experiencing distress. Caregiving is stressful enough, but there's a measure that I use for program inclusion to measure the level of distress. Now, in the 12 session program, it includes 7 group skills building, so 3 caregivers in a group, and then 5 individual sessions. All of our sessions are delivered weekly over toll-free telephone by trained lay pastoral care facilitators. And you'll hear us use that term, lay pastoral care facilitators. And what those are basically lay persons from the faith community or the community at large who have seen a presentation or who are interested in our program, and they decide that they would like to be trained to deliver our 12 session program. In those individual sessions with facilitators, they're going to focus on goal setting and problem solving to address concern identified by the caregiver. So, for example, most caregivers who come into our program have 2 or 3 things that they want to work on. Some are personal related, some are caregiving related. So if someone comes into the program and one of the things they want to work on is, like we're talking tonight about making the transition, they have 5 weeks one-on-one with their group facilitator where they can come up with some strategies to help them achieve their goal, whether it be transition into a facility or just making adjustments to keep that loved one at home. But they get that one-on-one time with that facilitator to address those concerns. Next slide, please. Okay. What are the contents of our skills building modules? Our program has 6 major components. The first is what we refer to as Dementia 101, which is an overview of the basic characteristics of the dementias. We have relaxation training that's combined with calming prayer and or meditation. So we actually teach our caregivers how to enter into the state of relaxation, mind, body, and spirit, entering into the state of relaxation. We also have effective thinking about the challenges of caregiving that are coupled with scripture, just changing the mindset about the way that you think about your caregiving situation. Let me also preface this by saying that yes, we do talk a lot about calming prayer, meditation, those faith based elements. So we are a faith based program, which means that we have woven those elements into the actual program, but we're also ecumenical. So we are open to anyone who proclaims a faith or not. Next slide, please. Okay. We also have my favorite module. I call it the me time module. So building in pleasant daily activities as a guard against emotional distress, being able to negotiate getting 15 minutes to take a walk or to listen to your favorite type of music. We also teach them communicating effectively, not only with the care partner with dementia, but with family and health professionals. And then lastly, developing those effective problem solving skills through personal goal setting. Next slide, please. I'm now going to give a little bit of information about our dementia awareness training and what that potentially looks like. So, for our dementia awareness training, our Acts 2 staff members will deliver both in person and virtual dementia awareness training to family caregivers and other interested parties. So, some of the topics that we may cover may be the basic information about the characteristic and stages of dementia. We will cover risk factors for Alzheimer's disease and related conditions, and also talk about strategies for preventing or delaying the onset of dementia. That would be included in our dementia awareness training. Next slide, please. Okay, and here's a description of what takes place in our individual problem solving consultations. So, 1 or 2 problem solving sessions are delivered over toll free telephone by Acts 2 staff members. The caregiver will prioritize 1 or 2 goals and they will work with the facilitator in developing an action plan. So some of the problems that we often encounter when people call us up for problem solving consultation would be difficulties with bathing and hygiene, challenges with eating, and the difficulty getting help from family members. Next slide, please. Okay. And also for our information and referral, or we refer our I&R consultation. So caregivers will receive 1 or 2 I&R sessions delivered over toll-free telephone by trained X2 staff members. The caregiver prioritizes the I&R goals and works with the facilitator in developing an action plan. So an example of some of the concerns that we often hear from caregivers is identifying affordable caregiving services, finding culturally responsive adult daycare centers, and locating effective estate planning assistance. Let me preface this by saying for the information and referral consultation, brief problem consultations, that is open to any person, regardless of race, regardless of location. So you can be located anywhere in the US and you're able to receive the information and referral and the brief problem solving consultation services. Next slide, please. Okay. Here are some dementia care resources. There's the Alzheimer's Association, the Alzheimer's Foundation of America, the Florida Department of Elder Affairs, the Elder Helpline, Elder Care Locator, and the Alzheimer's Disease Education and Referral Center. Next slide, please. Okay. And how can caregivers or other stakeholders contact ACTS2? There are multiple ways to contact us. You can reach us toll free, 1-866-778-2724. My local to Tallahassee cell phone number, 850-274-4945. My email address, tnnorton@fsu.edu. You can contact us here on Facebook. Send a message and we will absolutely respond. And we also have a website, www.ax2project.org. And what we're now going to do is to take you on a tour of our newly improved website. So if you bring up the website, please. Okay. If you will go to Program of Services. Here on our Program of Services tab, the information that I just provided, like what's included in our 12 sessions, what to expect, what you'll learn, all of that information can be found on our Program of Services tab. It also talks about those brief problem solving consultations. And also gives information on information and referral services. And you'll notice that on each page, under all of those tabs, we have sign up today. So if you're on this page and say, hey, I'd like to get more information, you can hit that sign up today button. It also gives a description of our dementia awareness training as well. Okay, if you will go back up to the top and click on caregiver resources. Okay. Here on our caregiver resources page, we have things like prayers and readings. We have information on the basics of dementia. We talk about caregiver well-being. We just try to find information that is relevant and pertinent to caregivers and put it in one place where you can come and gather that information. Okay. If you will click on links at the top. Here on our useful links page, we have links to resources that are available not only in the state of Florida, but the Panhandle region, and also some nationwide resources. So we have tried, as I said, to make it as easy as possible for you to be able to plug into the resources that would be beneficial for you. Okay, if you will go to donate, please. here on our donate page, it has information on why you would want to support Acts 2 and all of the information on how we are funded. There's also a link, as you see in red, donate to the Acts 2 annual budget. So if you would like to make a donation to Acts 2 or just read more about how we are funded, just go to our donate page. Okay. And lastly, if you would click on the top, if you would click on contact. Okay. If you happen to be on our website and if you have a question or if you're interested in receiving information, you can also always fill out our contact form. You can put in your information and this will route directly to my email. So if you just have a question and aren't even sure where to begin, come to the contact page, put your information, put your question in, it'll route to me and then I will contact you. We thank you so much for going on our tour of our newly developed website, and I encourage all of you to go and check it out. And what we're now going to do is to bring back all of the participants for our panel discussion.
Wow. Very, very powerful set of presentations. I just want to thank each of you. Have some questions. We may, Esperance, do you want to circulate the first question from one of our participants, and then we'll start from there? We have a question from Pastor Jimmy Bryant. We're glad that you're with us, Pastor Bryant. Will getting VA AIDS benefits cancel out Medicaid benefits? Let's hear from Mary Beth Mann, please. You're on mute, Mary Beth.
So sorry. I never like to answer a question that I am not sure of. And that one, good question. I don't think so, but I have a phone number, and this number, and if you're looking or listening, 1-877-896-0181. It is Senior Living Solutions. They can answer that question for you, but absolutely make the call. Don't make an assumption that it knocks one out.
Could you repeat that, Mary Beth,
Absolutely.
one more time slowly so Pastor Brian can write it down?
Yes, it is 1-877-896-0181. And that is Senior Living Solutions. There it is.
And Pastor Brian, and if you want to put a follow-up question into the chat, we'll bring it up. It's up to you, sir.
And
thank you, Mary Beth.
no, and absolutely. And I can get the answer to that question. If he wants to call me personally, I'll have it for him tomorrow.
Thank you.
For sure.
Question for Leslie Provis. Leslie, when do you normally hear, as the coordinator and social worker for the West Florida Hospital Memory Disorder Clinic, when do you hear about these questions in the course of the services that you provide for persons with dementia and their caregivers? When does it usually occur? Because you provide a variety of services.
Yeah, it depends on how their loved one is doing. Because I do ask about ADLs, activities of daily living, and I always ask if the caregiver is still comfortable providing the care, and then kind of go from there. So there is no set time. There is no designated visit. I mean, we have certain visits where we talk about these things, but it's always dependent upon how the caregiver is doing. And do they need additional care, whether it be at the home or if they have, in fact, exhausted their personal resources and have caregiver burnout and realize that, it is time to move their loved one into a safer community.
How often is it that you have follow-up counseling and consultation with individual care partners and their loved ones with dementia?
I check in with my folks quite a bit. You can ask Felicia. I check in with her. Yeah, I love it. And I haven't been over to visit her mom. Her mom's not far from me, but yeah, I follow up with caregivers on a regular basis.
By the way, folks, Leslie Provis is the clinic coordinator for the West Florida Memory Disorder Clinic. Am I pronouncing it? It's Florida West?
West
West-
Florida, yes, sir.
What she is the coordinator for one of 17 memory disorder clinics that are available and are affiliated with the Florida Department of Elder Affairs. So she is very much involved with the statewide network and is located in Pensacola. But we are fortunate that we have an overarching organization called the Alzheimer's Disease Initiative that sponsors and provides partial financial support to memory disorder clinics across the state. And we just appreciate your advocacy and high involvement, Leslie, not only in Pensacola, but across the state of Florida.
Yes, sir.
Okay, here's a question from Mary Guerin. Dr. Guerin, thank you, Dr. Guerin, for joining us. Mary Beth, how can I find someone like you in the Midwest? Not sure of the exact city yet, but because my siblings and I are still discussing the best location for my mom. Thank you, Dr. Guerin.
You can reach out to me. Call me directly, and I will give you my cell number on this broadcast. I don't mind. My cell number is 850-449-0919. When you narrow down the city, I will find out if we have an assisted living locator there, but then I will kind of give you the tools to reach out to your community, whatever city that ends up being, to try and find a service just like ours. But yes, assisted living locators is nationwide, but we're not everywhere. So I will do my best to see if I can pinpoint somebody close to that area.
Thank you so much, Mary Beth. And thank you, Dr. Guerin, for that really important question. Let's hear from Jimmy Bryant, Esperance, and bring that question to the table. Okay, please find out, Mary Beth, man. It took us 6 months to get the Medicare benefits. I will call Mary Beth tomorrow. Well, there you go, Mary Beth.
Yeah. What is he talking about? The Medicaid? Do you think Medicare
benefits to get Medicare benefits? That's what he wrote.
Okay.
Well, you don't have to
Call
work
me tomorrow.
Yeah,
Call me
it's Pastor Jimmy Bryant from the Miami area.
Oh, call me. I'll be awaiting your call.
Thank you too, Dr. Guerin. We appreciate you. Question for dear Felicia Reed. Felicia, I was fascinated with your advocacy for your mom, but I had a question. How do you negotiate the request for help over the phone? Who do you speak to? How do you make that happen? Because that takes quite a bit of savvy in a way, because you're doing it regularly and you're at a distance. How does that work?
So I've had a lot of practice. I have a special needs son. I had a premature child. And so out the gate for the last 25 years, it has prepared me for this. And that's a really good question. You cannot be shy. You cannot be timid. Assisted care living is very expensive unless you have some of the benefits that Mary Beth talked about. It's very expensive. And so I'm kind and I'm professional, but I'm firm. I have standards, and I pick and choose my battles, but there are certain things I draw the line on. And I think that's very important when you're in that role of advocating, and when you're long distance. I call, I leave messages, I leave emails, but I'm very sweet. I try to be anyway. I compliment them all the time on the things that they're doing well. So when I have to go in, and I don't go in on everything because then you just seem like, honestly, a bee just fussing about every little thing. So I know it's a Christian program, and Christian, but I don't know anybody say that. You just have to kind of try to pick and choose your battles. And unfortunately, I'm kind of in a situation right now where there seems to be a lot more battles and challenges than I expected. But my best advice is you just act like you love this person to death. And that's where it's coming from. It's not coming from a place where you're trying to make these people's lives miserable. You just got to come from a place of whoever this person is your heart and your soul, and you want to support the team. What can you do to help them do what they need to do for your loved one? And whenever I can, I try to bring goodies. I'm not above, bribery or those kind of things. Yeah, because I want them to know what they do. I appreciate it. It's a hard job. But when I call on the cell or I start texting because I don't like what I'm hearing or seeing or whatever, like this is real. This is real. And we're all in it together, and we need to do what we need to do. So I hope that answers the question, but that's how I go about it. I try to be as nice and as kind as I possibly can. And I try to just come from a place of, I love this person so much. This is how important this is to me.
Yeah, that's so effective, and that you're always thinking about the larger good, not just for your mom, but for the team, that you want to honor them and make it known how much you appreciate their efforts, and that it's not about just, pleasing you. It's about mom. We're a team. We're working together, if I'm hearing it correctly.
Yeah, you nailed it. The focus can't be on you and what you want. I always lead with my mom needs, or this would be really good for my mom, or I think my mom would do well in this instance. That is absolutely where you have to come from. And you have to come from a place of, I may not be directly hands-on helping, but I'm part of the team. And what do you need from me? What would help you do what you need to do? So, so the way you word things is very important. If you don't see the care that you want to see, you say things like, how can we, help my mom eat? Like, is there something I can, So, and then you're not as annoying, and you just pick and choose your battles, because you're not gonna get everything right. It's not gonna be 100% perfect.
Yeah, I'm just going around the table here. I'm going to ask Tamika a question just so that everybody gets a chance. I know that may be unnecessary, but that's the way I'm rolling tonight. Bottom line, Tamika, you've also been involved with family members, I believe most recently with your uncle, in getting assisted care and support in the home. And I'm just wondering, what is that correct, Tamika, what I just said?
Yes.
Or was it in a facility as well?
We tried for a facility, but we ended up getting care in home.
Okay, let me ask you this. What skills, having been involved in Acts 2, that you have used to optimize the probability of getting help for your uncle and who really needed assistance in the home? What skills did you deploy in making that work with the helper who came into the home?
The most important skill in anytime you're dealing with anybody that's either in the home or in a facility that's providing a service is to be assertive. As Ms. Felicia said earlier, you have to be firm and stand in what it is that you're asking someone to do. So not being aggressive, but just being assertive and standing up and saying, I want and demand the very best. for the person that I'm caring for. And then also, some emotional well-being had to factor into that as well, because that's an extra layer of stress. Anybody who's ever been a caregiver for anyone, a child, a loved one, what have you, you really want to be the person to do all of the things. And so when you're not able to be that person to do the things, you have to relinquish some of that control. And that's a hard thing. So you have to guard your emotional well-being as well to make sure that you're okay so that you can continue to make sure that they're okay.
Amen. Well, just time for one final thought. We'll go around the group again. We'll start with Mary Beth. A final thought to share with our audience.
There was one thing I left out of my PowerPoint that I find very useful. It is a power of attorney. When you are dealing with dementia, upon diagnosis, you should, and this is with any medical illness, but you should assign power of attorney to someone, because there's going to come a day where you can't make those decisions for yourself. So 2 things: prepare and get that power of attorney to somebody that you trust, that can help you.
Thank you, Mary Beth.
Mhm.
Leslie Provost, final thought.
I was just thinking about a book that's really invaluable, and I think it's called like the 36-hour day book that covers everything. And I'm still in the process of reading that, but I think that's just a really, really, like I said, invaluable resource for family members and caregivers to get.
Thank you, Leslie. Felicia Reed.
Embrace your role as a team member still and the caregiving process. If you make the decision to transition to an assisted living care facility, your expertise, your caring, your advocacy is still needed to make sure that that loved one gets the care that they need and deserve, and embrace that role.
Thank you, Ms. Reed. Tamika Norton-Brown, final thought.
My final thought would be for any person who finds themselves in a position where they have to make this decision, make the decision that is best for you, for your family, for your circumstance. Don't be swayed by what other people say and what they may do. You have to do what is best for you and your family at the end of the day, and don't carry any guilt or shame about whatever decision you have to make.
All right. So let's, I'm going to give a final thought, and then we'll call it. We appreciate your attention for an hour and 38 minutes. This was jam-packed and very informative. Please follow us on the Acts 2 Caregiver Project Facebook website. Our next workshop will focus on the power of faith, prayer, and meditation in influencing the well-being of persons with dementia and their family care partners. We will soon announce that date for this upcoming workshop on the Acts 2 Caregiver Project Facebook website. As we know, without a vision, the people perish, and we'd really like to impress upon everyone that even if you're not a person of faith, that having a vision for how you want your dementia caregiving to go is important. However, many of the persons we work with have embraced the faith tradition, and we will emphasize that the power of faith and prayer and meditation in our next workshop. Just one other thing that, thank you so much, Dr. Guerin, for your positive feedback. You're wonderful. I'd say the same thing to you, and the work that you do in advocating for the needs of adolescents with who are underrepresented minorities in the healthcare area. Also, I would like to introduce the behind the scenes folks there. I know we got to get off, but I can't resist. I want to introduce you to our social media coordinator, Esperance Nadombe, social media coordinator extraordinaire. And then Melissa Powell, who was pushing the slides, who is also the essentially public relations and social media person at the College of Health and Human Sciences at Florida State University. Melissa has been with us since the beginning of our effort in 2020. We love you, Melissa. Thank you for being a part of this. And thank you, folks, for joining us. We appreciate you, and we look forward, hopefully, to having you join us again at our next workshop within the next month and a half. Have a wonderful evening.